Hello everyone, this is Luck Up Elixir here, and welcome to our very first video here on the channel where we will be discussing the analysis and theory with the Diabolic creation. And right now I want to say there's going to be spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII OG, and the intermission DLC as well. So let's just jump right into it. This thing is terrifying and crazy, and I really want to talk about it. So what even is this thing? The Diabolic creation enemy intel reads, it is a man-made monstrosity created by Shinra's Research and Development Division. It has since been disposed of for its cannibalic nature and disobedience. All that remains of it is the data that is stored in the combat simulator. And if I'm being honest, I think this is Shinra throwing us off. They could just be showing us what we want to see. I think disposed of could mean multiple things. Maybe they did actually take it all out and just kill them off. It could also mean that they were released and just let go, and that was their way of disposing the creature. If we actually go to one of the creatures in Final Fantasy VII Remake, the base game, the Diabolic, I'm not getting that right, the enemy description reads that it is a creature that has escaped the labs of Shinra. So Shinra just really they're just not that great at containing events or creatures. They try, and sometimes they're successful, but it's not always the case. And we can also see the similarities to Genova with the Diabolic creation, having the tentacles and things of that nature. And it's very clear to see that it was made with Genova cells, most likely in one of the macro reactors. And if we actually look at the back appendage that the Diabolic creation has, it's very similar to the same appendages that we see on the failed experiment and its underlings. And this is to represent that with the Genova cells, it can sometimes create this reaction where you have a wing. And I'm sure it's supposed to signify, it's this angel of death and things like that. And Sephiroth, among, I believe, Genesis and Angeal are the few that have ever been successful with having that wing, and all these other creations are deemed as failures because these appendages aren't fully formed wings. They're just a mass of flesh that doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So the Diabolic creation also doesn't meet that metric of being a successful Genova cell adoptee. One thing I really want to say is that this design is amazing. The tentacles, the tentacled hand are just gnarly. The chest that pops out and throws out this noxious fume that probably poisons enemies and probably can kill a regular human. Who knows? I just love the design. They went all out. And I really think that the amount of effort they put into the design shows us that this is not going to be the only time we see this creature. And that kind of builds into the theory. But before we get into that, I really just want to stress that it was just how great this design was that I felt that I needed to make a analysis and theory video on the Diabolic creation. It is an artificial life form, and just fighting it in the combat simulator, it was a fun fight. I think that we actually are not even seeing its fullest potential or fullest strength because it is just captured in this combat simulator, and that isn't the most accurate representation of the Diabolic creation. Now, if we move on to the theory, the one thing this thing really looks like is a mechanoid. The mechanoids from the OG that come out of the pods, and they're all disgusting, and God, that scared me to hell as a kid. But this is an even scarier version, and what I'm thinking is that this is replacing the mechanoids. I originally thought that the failed experiments were going to be the ones that replace the mechanoids from the original. But what I'm thinking now is that the Diabolic creation is just the updated version of what the mechanoid looks like now. I could see the argument that maybe it's just an earlier, worse version of the mechanoid, but I think it's actually replacing it. And that would be so cool to see, as this design is just so badass, so imposing, and it really puts that fear factor. Even as an adult, I see this and it's scary. It's much scarier than the mechanoids in my opinion, but as a kid I was scared of the mechanoids, and I almost feel like this is an upgrade to that. And if we look at both the head crest and the face of the Diabolic creation, we can see that it looks just like the Machinoids. And I think we're going to see it in Nibelheim, more specifically the underground portion of the Nibelheim mansion, of the Shinra mansion. And wouldn't that just be the perfect place, having this thing slither and hunt for us in these dark and grungy tunnels? That's horror on such a great level. That'd be so scary. And we all remember playing through Shinra Mansion for the first time as a child or just younger, and how scary that place was. I think having these creatures there would be such a nice fit to level up the fear factor of the Shinra Mansion and all the dark secrets that it holds below. Now, moving on, I also want to address that the Diabolic creation it's going to reappear. Like I said, it's going to reappear in part 2. And it might also appear in the Galinka, I think is the name of it, which is that crashed ship in the OG below the water. Because there's a bunch of other experiments that are roaming that area if you're fighting there in the OG. And this might be another place that it pops up in. But I want to say that my guess is that it's going to be there below the Shinra Mansion. And that's when we see it. And I'd also really want to point out that its inclusion in this DLC that has such an emphasis on atmosphere and being dark and oppressive is just a little extra clue to me that it's going to pop up again in an equally scary place. And I think that place is going to be the Shinra Mansion. This DLC has all kinds of dark moments to it. When we see the death of Sonon, when we see the deep ground soldiers being taken in by Nero, that's scary, that's freaky. And that just bridges it that this creature was added in for a reason, and that for me that adds up. And I'd also want to point out that I think it's really cool that in the description it's described as being a cannibalistic creature. And if you really think about it, Nero has that same sort of cannibalistic nature to him as well when he absorbs the deep ground soldiers and uses them as his own supplement to darkness. I just think that's a nice little parallel, and I like to think they do that on purpose. I don't really know, but I thought that I'd point that out just for the sake of it. So that all being said, it was an incredible fight. I think we're going to be seeing it again, and it's replacing the old Machinoids, and this is the new design that we're getting, and I love it. It looks sick. It's terrifying, and I really hope it punches in for a darker story for part 2, which I think it very well may be. We see the storm at the end of the intermission DLC, and I think that's to show that things to come aren't going to be bright, aren't going to be sunny. Not that they necessarily were in Midgar, but I would love to see a darker tone going forward, and I'm just excited. That's really all I can say about that. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Thank you so much for partaking in this first video for Luck Up Elixir. Let me know what you guys think of the theory, and have a chill rest of your day.